He still didn't care. Shockingly, he punched me, then grabbed me by my collar and began pulling me out of the venue. Everyone stood up. I was protesting loudly and trying to get his hand off my collar, but his grip was too tight. Two of my colleagues came in and held me.
Let go of him, you evil man! Can't you see this is his sister's funeral?
Rather than listen to the man, Mr. Thompson slapped him. Everyone was shocked. More of my colleagues stepped in, and after much struggle, I was finally separated from Mr. Thompson.
You've suffered us enough? How can you be so heartless and insensitive? This is the last straw for you. We're going to deal with you.
Before I knew it, they pounced on him. Mr. Thompson received blows and slaps from different sides. I was afraid of them killing him, so I stepped in and managed to stop them. Get out of here now before we hurt you even more. Hey there, I'm Steven. I graduated from college about 8 years ago. Those first 2 years after college were tough. I was jobless and desperate to land a gig. My folks offered their connections, but I held out. They'd carved out impressive careers, promising a surefire job if I relented. Yet, I craved the satisfaction of finding my own path. Luck smiled eventually. A marketing role opened up in a top-tier company, ranked among the state's wealthiest. The interview? Brutal. A swarm of candidates vying for that golden ticket. My results dazzled the interviewers, sealing the deal. Finally, a job. The relief was palpable, but reality soon diverged from my daydreams. Friendships were forbidden. I learned to cope with that. And there was Mr. Thompson, the manager. Manager by title, bully by nature. I made sure to avoid him as best as I could. Mr. Thompson prioritized his ego over anything else. And of course, the company's profit. He forced us to work so hard to keep his position. What had once seemed like a dream job now felt like just a paycheck. But could I leave? No. I knew it would be hard trying to get a good job if I left, so I stayed. My friends marveled at my success without knowing what I had to face behind the camera. I mean, I did understand them. Within 3 years of working at the company, I got a house, and for myself. People would think I was having all the fun with my job. Once, in my 4th year working there, the company faced a season of loss. It was even tougher for us because Mr. Thompson nearly brought down the building when he got scolded by the CEO.
You incompetent lots. What more can I do to make you stupid things smart? Did you mock me when you heard the CEO reprimanding me for being incompetent? Did it make your rotten hearts dance happily?
Luckily, the loss season was soon replaced by profits, and calmness returned to the company. After we bounced back to profitability, my mind churned with new ideas. I felt a deep urge to contribute to the company's future, to prevent another setback like the one we had just faced. So, I set to work drafting a plan. When I finally had a solid plan in hand, I braced myself and approached Mr. Thompson's office. I had encountered his wrath before, especially on those days when his frustration with the workforce reached its zenith. But I was determined. I knew that if the CEO liked my idea, it could mean a promotion or a significant bump in salary. His eyes bore into me, like daggers as I entered.
What are you doing here?
His tone was scary. It was cold and cutting as always, sending a shiver down my spine. I placed the carefully prepared file on his desk and launched into my presentation without hesitation. When I finished, he simply took the file from my hands and dismissed me with a curt instruction to wait for his response. Well, you can imagine my surprise when, 2 weeks later, a meeting was held. There, the CEO praised Mr. Thompson and announced an increment in his salary for helping the company avoid another loss with his brilliant ideas. I was pissed because Mr. Thompson had used my work. I nearly cried. Mr. Thompson lied about working his ass out to draft the file. I wanted to scream so badly that he was lying, but I couldn't. I let it go, but I washed my hands off, trying to find solutions to the company. I'd made a mistake, and I wasn't going to repeat it. 2 months later, my younger sister fell sick and had to be rushed to the hospital. My sister was the only sibling I had, and she was precious to me. When I got the news about her admission to the hospital, I was devastated. I couldn't see her until Friday night. When I eventually did, my heart sank. She looked so bad that I was brought to tears. According to my parents, she'd been ill for a few weeks before she finally had to be brought to the hospital. I stayed there the whole weekend, cleared the bills, and begged the doctors to help her. They assured me that she would be fine. Well, it didn't turn out that way. A week later, news reached me that my sister had died in her sleep. I was at the office when I received the news. My heart shattered as I burst into tears. My colleague comforted me after learning about what happened. It was a sad moment in our department. After crying, I left for Mr. Thompson's office. I wanted to request an early departure. "I'm sorry for bothering you, sir. I just received news about my sister's death, so I really need to leave right now." I was crying again. I felt so weak and defeated, like my whole life happiness has been taken from me. All I wanted to do was go to my family and cry with them. I wanted to see my sister before she got moved to the morgue. But my boss had other plans.
How's it any business of mine if your sister died? People die every minute, Mr. Steven. You're not leaving this company just because you lost your sister. She's dead. There's no point being all strong and loyal to a dead person.
I nearly punched him for the nonsense he was spewing. How could he be so insensitive? I stormed out of the office. The others saw my mood and immediately guessed what had happened.
Mr. Thompson is so evil. How could he?
I already knew he wouldn't let him leave.
All I could do was cry. My parents and friends were calling, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up. I couldn't tell them my boss had restricted me from leaving even after hearing about the death of my sister. I managed to stay through the remaining hours. Once it was time to leave, I grabbed my things and ran out. I drove straight to the hospital, just in time before my sister got taken to the morgue. I cried so much until I passed out. The next day, I didn't go to work. All I wanted to do was mourn my sister. I missed nearly 20 calls from Mr. Thompson, but I didn't care to return it. 2 days later, I got the CEO's contact from one of my colleagues, and I reached out to him. He was quite furious about why I didn't speak to Mr. Thompson instead, but I apologized without an excuse. I didn't want to paint Mr. Thompson black, even though he already was. After I explained my predicament to him, the CEO expressed his condolences and granted me 3 weeks to mourn and bury my sister. I thanked him in tears. He also sent me some money as his form of sympathy. My sister's funeral was scheduled for Sunday, 2 weeks later. I'd invited all of my colleagues, and none was against attending. On that day, I felt safe. Seeing my family, friends, and colleagues there made me feel safe. I cried even more as she was being lowered to the ground. The realization of never seeing my sister again hit me so badly that I burst into tears again. When the priest started praying, I heard the doors of the hall suddenly flung open. I turned to see Mr. Thompson.
How dare you? How dare you leave the company for more than 2 weeks? Are you crazy? Is your bloody father the CEO?
"I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, but it's my only sibling who died. I can't work because I'm not in the right state of mind. Also, the CEO is in support of this." He still didn't care. Shockingly, he punched me, then grabbed me by my collar and began pulling me out of the venue. Everyone stood up. I was protesting loudly and trying to get his hand off my collar, but his grip was too tight. 2 of my colleagues came in and held me.
Let go of him, you evil man. Can't you see this is his sister's funeral?
Rather than listen to the man, Mr. Thompson slapped him. Everyone was shocked. More of my colleagues stepped in, and after much struggle, I was finally separated from Mr. Thompson.
You've suffered us enough? How can you be so heartless and insensitive? This is the last straw for you. We're going to deal with you.
Before I knew it, they pounced on him. Mr. Thompson received blows and slaps from different sides. I was afraid of them killing him, so I stepped in and managed to stop them. "Get out of here now before we hurt you even more." His face was swollen, and he had bruises all over his body. His clothes were torn.
You will all regret this.
We watched as he limped away. I apologized to my colleague, but they stopped me. According to them, Mr. Thompson deserved it. The next day, I heard that none of them went to work. Words had spread about what Mr. Thompson did, and everyone there refused to work if Mr. Thompson wasn't fired. The CEO called me to inquire what happened, and I told him everything. How he barged into my sister's funeral, how he's been harassing the workers and making us uncomfortable, including how he'd stolen my idea and got rewarded for it. The CEO was shocked. He promised to fire Mr. Thompson and begged us to be at work early the next day. We agreed. When we got there the next morning, we noticed the CEO's absence and only saw Mr. Thompson. He ordered all of us to gather in the hallway, and we obeyed.
You stupid things, how dare you? I'm going to deal with every one of you for this. I should still be nursing my wounds, but the CEO asked to see me. Watch how he's going to make all of you dimwits pay for this.
The CEO was behind him while he was saying that. When he showed himself, Mr. Thompson was shocked. The CEO lashed out at him mercilessly. After nearly 20 minutes of raining insults on him, the CEO faced us. He apologized for Mr. Thompson's behaviors over the years.
You're fired, Mr. Thompson. I don't want to ever see you near this premises. Return the key to the company car you were given. Let go of the house, too. You're dismissed.
Mr. Thompson was defeated. He walked out of the company with his head down. Mr. Thompson had a house of his own, beside the one the company gave him. The previous day, 2 of my colleagues had gone there and burnt it down. His neighbors could have informed him, but they all hated him because of how bad he was to them. They watched the house and the cars in it burn. After Mr. Thompson left the company, he went straight there, but was met with the ruins of his properties. The man broke down in heavy tears. Meanwhile, in the company, the CEO apologized to us again. I got the bonus and promotion I deserved, and a better person was brought in as the manager. A week and a few days later, we heard that Mr. Thompson had been rushed to the hospital after suffering a heart attack. He tried to buy another house, but fell into the hands of scammers who scammed him of nearly all his savings, leaving him broke and homeless. While he was at the hospital, his wife used the remaining money they had to rent a small apartment. When Mr. Thompson was discharged and went to the house, he went wild with rage. In the middle of yelling and stomping his feet, he fainted and had to be rushed to the hospital again. He was in coma. Until now, he hasn't woken up. Well, karma did work, hand in hand with us. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.